In this video, we're going to be doing a budget app in React. So this is what we're going to be building here. So you can enter an item, we can just call it test, and then an amount, which would be 10, and we submit that, and we get a credit or a positive value of 10. And then this will be for our negative values or the debits, things that we maybe have paid for or whatever. And then we have a history of all the different items here. So, and we can see our current balance here. And so if we go test 2 and we enter a negative, say negative 20, something costs 20, and we get a debit of negative 20. And again, our history here. Now, the cool thing here is we're going to persist the data. So usually in a React app, if we didn't set anything to our local storage, it would just get blown away if we refreshed. But we refresh this here and our data still is there. And then again, if we want to restart stuff or clear our budget, we can press that, clear our budget. And again, if we refresh, it'll be cleared. So this is what we're going to be building. Hopefully it's helpful. Let's get right into it then. Okay, so basically we just have a blank create React app open here, and we can see our file structure. We just have a app.js, which we're going to do basically all our work in. Usually you break things up into different files, but we're just, for simplicity's sake, going to do everything in here. App.css, which is blank because we've got rid of all that. We don't need anything there. And actually we can get rid of everything here, and we can get rid of this styling here. We can get rid of the logo. We don't need that. And then in here, we're just going to do an H1 with a class name of title. Okay, and we're just going to call it budget. So we can save that. And then the last thing that we do need is to add Bulma. So if we go back over here, we can go to Bulma cdn.js and look up Bulma, and then copy this here, come back over, and we want to put that in our public HTML, and I've already done that. So that is this. So we want to do a link and then the href to that link that we just copied. Okay, so that's about it for that. And after that, we can kind of get going on this. So let's start by just creating some structure for our app and what it's going to look like. So we have our H1, and then we're going to want to do a dot container dot layout, and then inside of that come down, and that's going to be our layout for our entire thing. And we're going to want to go dot form, and then that's where we're going to have our form. So we want an H2 with it's going to have a class name of subtitle, and that subtitle is just going to be enter an item. And then below that, we're going to want to do our form. So we're going to have a form tag there. We don't need action right now. And then in that form, we'll come out and fill out the on submit and everything later. But first, for now, we're just going to go a div. Inside that div, we're going to have an input. And this input is going to be of type text, and it's going to have class name of input, and that'll be for Bulma. That'll be the styling. That'll be the tag that will tell how to style the input. And we're going to have a placeholder equal to enter transaction, and then we'll do the rest of it below after. So we'll just save that, and then let's actually bump this up. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. So let's bump that up a little bit. And then after that input, we're going to come below input after the div, and we're going to do our second input. And that's going to be of type number, not type text. So make sure you do that. And then we're going to have, again, class name equal to input. and placeholder is equal to what? Enter amount. And that'll be the number, the amount, the cost, whatever you want to say. And then again, we're going to go and fill the rest out of that later. So we'll come down below the second div, and we'll open up a new div here, and we will do a button, and that button is going to be of type submit, and it's going to have a class name of button is dash primary, and close that off, and we're just gonna say I guess we'll just say submit. Okay, we can save that. Actually, don't need that. All right, now let's come down, scroll up a little bit for you, and below that button and that div, we're gonna end the full form. So that's it for our form. Actually, let's check out how that looks. So if we come back to our React app, this is what it looks like right now. Oh, and I have this running. You might need to have that running. So open up your terminal. I have mine running. And if you don't, open up a window and just run npm start, and that will get it running for you. Okay, so that is good. Kind of close that down for now. And let's keep going. Let's fill in this out. So below our form, we're going to have another div. And that div is going to have a button. And it's going to have a dot button dot is dash danger. And that button is gonna say clear budget. And that's gonna clear the budget for us. Save that. Okay, that's good. And then below that, come down. Below that button, we're gonna have an H2. And that's gonna have a class name of subtitle. And that's gonna be the history. So the history of our transactions. So let's come down here, and we'll just add the rest of our totals right now. So we're gonna have a div with a dot totals class name. And then inside that, we're gonna have an H2 with a subtitle. And that is gonna say, we'll say current balance. Okay. And then inside that H2, or outside that H2, we are going to do an H3, and that's just gonna have our balance. So right now we'll just, we'll hard code that as balance, and that's going to change after. So below that, come down, and that's going to be another div, and inside this we're going to go in H3, and we're going to say dot subtitle again, and inside that subtitle we're going to say credit. It's going to be our credit, and then below that, we'll do an H4, and that will just be, we'll just say credit for now too. This will be dynamic later, but we'll just hard code it for now. Okay, that's good. Come down below that, have our last div, and inside that div, we're gonna have an H3, and then inside that H3, it's gonna be a class name subtitle. And inside that, we'll go debit. Cool. And then H2 below that, we'll tab that, and we'll just say debit for now. Okay, so I think that's it for now. Let's go back over and see if that looks just horrible. Okay, so we don't have any styling, but we have our basics of our web app here, and we'll go back and do the CSS after too. So now let's come in and we will come up to the top here, and we're going to be adding some state. So what are the things we need from in order to do that? So we're going to need use state. Okay, and we're also going to just bring in right now use effect, because we're going to need that also. So we're going to come down here, and below the app here, we're going to go const, and the first piece of state we're going to have is going to be called transaction, and then set transaction, and that is equal to use state. Okay, and we're going to have two pieces of state here. So we're going to have a description, and that's going to be an empty string to start off with, and then we're going to have an amount. So those are the two fields that we're entering into our of text boxes that we have. Okay, so we can come below that, and the second piece of state, we're going to go const square brackets list and set list equals use state again. And then this is just gonna be, we'll start with an empty array. So this is gonna be a list of all the history that we have. And then we can come below that and go const square brackets balance set balance equals use state. And again, this one is just gonna be the balance. We just do an empty string here. And then we're gonna go const square brackets credit set credit equals use state. And then this one again, we can just do an empty string to start off with. Now eventually we're going to come in here and set these to our local storage, and we're going to get it from there. But for now, we're just trying to get this going on the React side without setting local state yet. So one more const debit and set debit. That's good. It should be a capital D equals use state. And then this one again, we're just gonna go empty string. Okay, so that is good for that. And then we gotta come in here, and we need to, in our inputs, create a few things here. So come down to your inputs inside of your form, and below the placeholder, we're gonna need a couple more things. So we're gonna first need a value, and that's gonna be equal to transaction dot description. Then below that, we need a name, and that's gonna be equal to description. And then below that, we're gonna have an on change, and that is gonna be equal to update form. And this is how we're gonna update the form. So why don't we go ahead and create this update form function, because that's gonna set our state for that. So below our state here, above our return statement, give ourselves a little room, and we're gonna create the function here. So const update form equal to E, that's the event. And this is where we're gonna set our transaction. So we're gonna be using the set transaction here to set our state for the transaction. So set transaction, open this up, and we're gonna spread in the current transaction. Okay, and then we're gonna open up some square brackets, and we want e.target.name, and that's why we had a name property there, colon, and we're gonna set that to e.target.type, and we're gonna say if that is equal to a number, we want to parse int, so this will make it into a number from a string, and we're gonna go e.target.value. Otherwise, if it's already a number, we want to e.target.value without parsing it. So let's save that, and you can see this here. So this is our update form function. So again, if it's a number, we want to, if the type is a number, we want to parse the int. Otherwise, we just want to give it how it is. And that is because this is a text and our second input is a number. So let's come down here and finish that off. So our second one, we want to say what? So we have to give this a name, and that is equal to amount. And let's save that so it reformats for us. And then we're gonna have a value, and that is gonna be equal to transaction dot amount. And then below that, we're gonna go and give it an on change, and it's gonna have the same on change as our other one. And it's gonna differentiate by the name value. So that's how it'll know which one to use. Okay, let's take a break and see what we got, if it's working at all. So you want to enter transaction, test, enter amount, 20, submit it. Oh, and it's going to submit. Oh, we haven't done the submit form or anything, but it seems like the state is setting. And actually, we can check that by going like this. And if you have the React developer tools here, we can see the state here on this side. Maybe bump that up a little bit here. Here's the state. So if we enter here, it should give us the description of test in the amount of 20. So that's how we know that's working. Okay, so we can get rid of that for now. Come back over to our VS Code. And that means the next thing we want to do is do our on submit. So that's going to be part of our form, and we're just going to do that all in line here. So let's give us a little bit of room here. And we're going to have our form, and below that we'll have our on submit, and that is going to be equal to the event. And we'll have our function. Oops, the event is curly brackets, the event, and open up some brackets there, and we'll go e.prevent default, and that will make sure our page doesn't refresh on submit. And then we're gonna have a couple things. The first one's gonna be set list, and this will set our list, and we're gonna go transaction, and then we're gonna spread in the list. And the list there, and then we'll also I guess we'll do this now. So we're gonna have a function called plus minus, and let's go and create that. But first, actually below that, we're gonna say set transaction, and we're just going to set our transaction back to empty strings here, and the amount as well. So that'll reset when we submit our form, so there's no numbers there. But first, let's do this function here. So let's come up, and below here we'll go, and we'll go const plus minus, and that's equal, do an arrow function, come in here, and we're gonna go transaction dot amount, and if that's greater than 0, so if it's a positive amount, we're doing a ternary operator here. We're gonna go set credit, and then we're going to pass in credit plus transaction dot amount. And then if it's not, colon, so this is the other side, if it's not, we're going to set it as the debit, and that will be set to the current debit plus transaction dot amount. So let's save that, come back over and see what that looks like. Okay, so that's a ternary operator. So if the transaction dot amount, so if whatever the transaction dot amount is greater than 0, we're going to set the credit to this, and if it's a negative amount, we're going to set the debit to that. Okay, so that should be good for that. And then we also, what we want to do is come down here below our history here. Where was that? History below this. And we're going to list out the history. So we want to go list.map, and then we're going to map over the full list. So for each item in the list, we'll just go I, and then we want to return. And we're going to have a table with a class name of table. And then inside of that table, we have a tBody. tBody, and inside that tBody, well, that's going to have a, we got to add a key because React requires a key, and that key, we don't really have an ID for that. So we're going to go I dot description, which probably isn't the greatest key, but hopefully for such a, like a budget app like this, hopefully it's not too big a deal. And then inside the tBody, we're gonna have a tr, and that's gonna be an I dot description, and then below that we're gonna have a td. No, that's not it. td, and that is gonna be what? We're gonna parse int, and then it's gonna be I dot amount. Okay, and we're gonna put a $sign for that. And I think this needs to have a bracket too. This shouldn't be a bracket. Okay, so that saves. And then we can come down also and change these. So the current balance, we want this to be dynamic. So we want the balance to be $sign and then balance. And then what else? Credit. This should be, we'll go $sign, curly brackets, credit. And what else? Debit. $sign, curly brackets, debit. Okay, so save that. Let's see here. Come back over here. Just check this out. Test and 20. Submit. Okay, there's a few things not working here. So first of all, oh, the debit, the credit actually works. The debit doesn't. I think we have an error here. This should be curly brackets, not square brackets. So make sure you have that. Come back over here again, test, amount, 20. This isn't working, parse int, the history, the number isn't working. Okay, but that's okay because we haven't set that yet. Okay, so what are we missing in here? So in order to get the balance, we're going to create a function, const get balance, and that's going to be equal to arrow function, and we're going to go const amounts is equal to list.map, and we'll go I again, and I.amount. And then we're gonna go const, and we'll just call it money is equal to amounts dot reduce. And then we're gonna have an accumulator and an item, arrow function, and we're gonna go ACC accumulator plus equals our item, and we're gonna go, actually we gotta wrap this. So come here, this is gonna have a bracket there, and come in here and comma 0. So we'll start at 0, and then we have to go dot to fixed, which will give our decimal places, and we want to go to 2 decimal places. And then we want to set the balance at money. So this will set our balance every time the get balance is run. Now, when is the get balance going to be run? So we want that to be run every time we update the list. So that's why we brought in use effect. So we can go use effect, and that's gonna have an arrow function, and this is where we're gonna call get balance. And then the only other thing we have to do is when we want it to be run. So that's the second parameter here, and we want every time list is updated. Okay, so let's go back and check that out again. Enter transaction, test, amount, 20. And those are working, the current balance is working, the credit, the debit's working. Okay, that's great. Let's see if the debit's working actually. Negative $24. Okay, the debit's working, the current balance is working. The only thing that isn't working is the parse int of the history. So let's go back and check out what's happening there. Okay, so we've written this a little wrong in here, so we don't actually want our curly brackets there and there. We want to wrap our entire thing with parse int in curly brackets. Now, let's see if that works. Refresh that. Test 22. Boom. Okay. So that is basically our entire app in React. Now, the only other thing that we want to do is we want to set it so it saves in our local storage, because right now we have these values, but if we refresh, they just get blown away, right? So let's come back over, and the way we're going to do this is we're just going to update them in our use effect. So come back up here. So below get balance, all we're going to do is update them by going like this. So we're going to go local storage dot set item, and we're going to call this first one, and we'll call it list, and we're going to go JSON dot stringify, because you have to turn them into a string before you put them in there, and then we're going to toss in the list. Okay, and then we can copy that down 2 more times. And the second one we want to call credit and pass in the credit. And the last one we're going to have is going to be debit and debit. Now that should work. Every time we update the list, those should save into our local storage. So let's see here. So if we open this up, okay, and we go over to our application, and we can just clear this, and we can go test the amount of 22, submit it, and it saves our list and our credit. And then if we go negative 20, and it saves our debit. Okay, so it's working, it's saving into local state. but is it going to work if we're not getting the balance yet to set into our state? So we still need to get it. And in order to do that, we're just going to put it right into our state. So the first one we're going to do is our list. So our set list, instead of just an empty array here, we're going to go JSON.parse, which I'll turn it back from a string. And then we'll go local storage dot get item, and we want to get the list item, and we can close that off. And if there is no list item, we're just going to show the empty array. So we can also toss in an or there. So now if we come back, let's see if that just worked there. And local storage, oh, we spelled that wrong. Capital S. Save that, come back over. Now we can see, I don't know if that actually, okay, so if we refresh that, we can see that that worked. Refresh it again, it's getting our history and our current balance, which are the things we get from the list. But we still have some other ones we want to do. So credit, we need this. So let's go again, JSON.parse, and we want to go local storage.get item, and this one we want to get is credit. Okay, so that's good. Save that, and then debt, we can just copy this over. Same thing for debit, and we'll change this to debit. Okay, so that is, I think, it for that. So let's go back over. What did we spell wrong this time? I think we're missing a bracket. Or there we go. Closing parentheses we were missing. So now let's come over and see if this works. Enter transaction amount, test 22. Okay, that all works. Current balance and negative 300, and it's saving that. Okay, that works good. Okay, so it looks like we had an issue because it was saving differently in our local storage. So I would come in here and just go to your application and just clear out any values you have here for now. So you can just clear everything, and then that should work, and we can refresh, have a fresh thing here, and we can go test again, and again 11, that works. Another negative 100, enter, our current balance works, negative 100. Yeah, okay, so that's good. Now let's come back here. The last thing we want to do actually is clear out, we want to be able to clear our budget with that button that we had here. So where was that? Clear budget. So we have to have an on-click handler here, and that's just going to say clear budget. Okay, save that, and then we have to go create that up here. So we'll just come right below here, and we'll say const clear budget equals arrow function, and then with the clear budget, all we're gonna do is we're gonna go set list, and we're gonna set that list to an empty array. We're gonna go set credit, and we'll set the credit to null, and set debit. and that can be set to null also. And I think if we come back over, that should be it. So we have a few values here. If we press clear budget, it clears everything. Okay, so let's try this out and should be all ready to go. So say we have a budget and the first option or the first item we're putting is shopping and the amount 100, submit, and then we say payday, and actually those are reversed, so payday should be 200, and shopping or CD player, because everyone's using CD players these days, and that's minus $30, submit, and then we have our current balance, our debit, our credit. Okay, so that's working well. So the last thing we want to do is do a little bit of styling. Now if you're not interested in that, you can go ahead and switch that off, but we're just gonna do a little CSS just to make it look a bit better. So the first thing we want to do is our dot title, and we're just gonna go text align and center. Okay, that's good. And then below we're gonna go our layout and our dot layout rather, and that's gonna be display grid and grid template display grid. That's going to be grid template columns, and that is going to be 1FR 1FR, and then below that we're going to go grid template rows, and that's going to be 1FR 1FR 1FR, and then we're just gonna have some margin. So margin left, and that's gonna be 20 ems, and margin right, and that'll be 20 ems. Okay, and then below that we have our dot form, and we're just gonna go grid column, and that's gonna be 1-2. And we have a CSS kind of grid video I did before if you're interested in learning a little bit more of that. But otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of go through this, not explain all of it. And we're gonna have our display, actually we're gonna go display grid, and then we'll go grid, so we got its own columns, and 1FR 1FR, and then we're just going to keep this with the position absolute, and then we're going to go top 50 pixels. This should be, and we're going to go right pixels. Okay, then below that come down, and we only have a couple more things here, so let's go dot input, and that's gonna be margin bottom 10 pixels and width 50%. And then the last thing we want here is our button, and we're just gonna give it a margin bottom of 30 pixels. Okay, so that's our CSS. Let's come back and see if that worked. Okay, our current balance, our budget, everything looks good. Enter transaction, dog food, which is -40. Submit that. That works. Seems like everything is good. Hopefully that gives you an idea of a little React project you can do. So if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe or hit like, and until the next one, thanks for watching.